My guest today has built an app that is considered the LinkedIn for what you eat. Dineable helps businesses get to the next level with food sustainability and personalization. It launched last year and is already helping meeting and event planners collect food profiles in advance. He has been involved in the tech industry for a long time, including being the IT director for a retirement home and a sysadmin for an arts college, as well as doing some time in corporate IT. When he's not traveling, he is an avid reader who loves baseball and lives in the suburbs of Philadelphia with his wife and cat. Please welcome Mark Surkin. This is the Nerd Out of Water podcast with Michael Lobb. So, hi Mark, how are you doing?
Very well today. Thanks, Michael. How are you?
Great to have you on this podcast. And the first thing I try to do before everyone switches the podcast off is give you an opportunity to plug Dineable and tell us how to get there and what it's all about.
Great. Well, I don't think they're going to switch off this quickly, but thanks for the opportunity to be here talking with you today. I appreciate it. Always happy to share about Dineable. In a quick sentence or two, we help businesses get to the next level with food sustainability and personalization with our proprietary food profile sharing platform that TeamScale has helped us build out. You can think of it like a LinkedIn for what you eat. It helps meeting planners and meeting organizers collect counts of how many people are eating at their events and what their food restrictions are or are not if people eat everything. We're launched and operating here in the U.S. on the East Coast, where we're based right outside of Philadelphia in a suburb, and it's been a great run and a great ride.
And you've got quite a number of clients on at the moment. Are they doing really well, or how are they operating? How are they running with Dineable?
Clients are doing great. We've got a little over 1,750 users in the system now at last count from a couple of days ago. We're doing everything from events of 10 people to events of a couple hundred.
Wow.
I think the largest one we've done is about 400 people.
Yeah, great.
And it's just been great, a great thing to watch people get value out of the platform. We frequently get feedback from folks who have significant food restrictions who have shared them through the platform, and they respond to us afterwards and said, "This is the first time I've gone to a work event or a conference and I've actually had food for me." And just helps take stress away for folks, makes them feel cared for. That's what hospitality is all about. That's what we're here to support.
Great. What are some of the biggest challenges you've had to face when building Dineable?
Well, that's a big question, but I can I'll point at a couple of things. I think probably the first thing I think about when asked about challenges when building Dineable is I think about building the product and how I've learned how extremely difficult it can be to make something simple actually simple when people use it. You look on the outside at these very, very well-built product experiences that are all over the web now, and it's easy to overlook how simple they are and how much work has gone into making something that simple really, really, truly effective. It always seems like you've got one too many clicks, one too many words, one too many buttons on a screen. It's a fun process, learning constantly to make it better, but certainly I'd love it to go quicker at times.
How are you overcoming those? Do you use a testing, or how do you fix that?
Yeah, well, number one, of course, is once your platform is out there in the world and people are using it and they're enjoying using it, you get great feedback from them. Makes it a whole lot easier to improve. In the absence of that, when you're trying to test out a brand new feature, of course, the best thing that you can do is build a prototype, get out there with some users and test it. If you're trying to move really quickly, which sometimes we are with Dineable, we might roll something out to our detriment that we haven't adequately tested, and that'll end up biting us in the ass. Excuse my language. So I guess the lesson there is always do user testing, even when you think you don't have time for it, even if it's just to get it out there with 3 people on the side of the street who you run into, or a friend or a family member, somebody with a different perspective. Always make sure you're testing.
Yeah, great. I mean, obviously, the backbone of Dineable is, apart from the business side of things, that the reason for having it is the technology that's helped it grow. How has technology made Dineable possible? I mean, this sort of thing wasn't possible, say, 10 years ago without smartphones. How is this making what you're trying to do with Dineable possible?
Sure. I mean, just over the past 10 years, I guess the proliferation of technology has happened so quickly. I think if I went back 10 years ago, I'd feel like I was living in the dark ages. The fact that we're so much more connected now, that mobile technology that's in our pockets or on our tablets is so much more efficient and much easier for technology teams, development teams to build, because there's so many more efficient tools with which to build these things, that I'm sure that if we were building Dineable 10 years ago, we would have spent at least twice the amount of money. And the product adoption would be much slower, because people simply wouldn't be as used to sharing their information in the same way as they are today. One of the things that you've got to have on your side with a tech startup, with any startup, is timing. And I think people have learned that if they share information about themselves in a safe way, they're going to get a better and a more personalized experience with whatever they're doing. And people have gotten comfortable with that over the past 10 years.
Yeah, very true.
And I just don't think that the world was in the same place 10 years ago.
And what about in the way that you work? Has technology now enabled you to do something that you couldn't do in the past?
Well, I'm sure that had I tried to work with a development team on the other side of the world 10 years ago, the collaboration technology would not have been nearly as good. I did not work with anybody in that sense 10 years ago, so I can't speak to it for sure. From a personal perspective, I'm actually a pretty low-tech guy with the way I manage my day-to-day work. I like putting pen to paper, making lists. If I'm trying to record something for myself to go back to later, the highest tech I do is just send myself an email to remind myself to go back to it.
Right.
I honestly can't say that I've adopted many of the more advanced, work prioritization tools and so forth. I will say that the advances in, Google Calendar and Gmail and things like that, and tools like Trello and HubSpot have certainly been tools that have made us much more efficient as a business.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I was working in IT, and we had our IT-based ticketing systems, and they were pretty crappy.
Yeah.
And I think things have taken a big step forward over the years.
Yeah, it's a lot more user focused now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot like you. I use a whiteboard and a pen and paper when I can. But obviously, when we're collaborating across the other side of the world, there has to be some way to share that. And often I'm finding that I'm just taking a photo and sending it, and then somebody else who is better at building diagrams turns it into an actual electronic diagram.
Yeah. On that front, I guess I owe quite a bit to Google Slides.
Yeah.
and design collaboration tools like Figma.
Yeah.
That help us be a lot more efficient in that sense. And certainly much better bandwidth makes those tools work a lot better.
Speaking of the development teams around the world, how do you deal with the cultural differences in work style?
Well, at the top, I think diversity always makes everyone and everything better. Any kind of diversity. So I don't say that to kind of ignore the challenges that are inherent to working with people from all over the world. That said, I welcome having as many perspectives as I can inside the business and helping build out the product, because that just makes it better. There's definitely challenges in communicating business values and user journeys across cultural divide. Sometimes you have to go a little further in making sure that information is accurately communicated.
Yeah.
I've put a lot of effort into trying to learn to be as good as I can be in building effective user journey statements. I guess effective and succinct user journey statements. To try to make sure that we're always communicating clearly. And certainly staying in touch closely is a requirement, which we certainly could not do without all the technology at our fingertips these days.
Yeah. I mean, I speak to you more than I speak to my mum sometimes. So
I won't. I don't know if my mom's going to listen to this, but I think that's probably true on this end as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's going to listen to this and then call me for lunch immediately. I definitely won't lie that the time zone thing sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I daydream of sleeping.
Yeah, definitely. We've worked with yourself, who's on the East Coast, and we've also worked with some clients on the West Coast. I know that you've spoken to me before about some subtle differences between the way that startup culture is. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm really interested to know more.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, first off, I've never worked on the inside in a West Coast startup, so everything's kind of observational and based on conversations I've had with other people.
Yeah.
It's not an easy question to answer. There's definitely differences in available resources geographically. There's differences in work culture. People tell me all the time when I'm networking or I'm trying to raise capital, I hear all the time, Dineable sounds like a West Coast business. How's it going for you in Philly? For anybody who's not in the US, Philly means Philadelphia. Philadelphia is just a different kind of town than if you were out there in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's not to say there's anything wrong with it. It just operates much differently than another part of the world. We've got an incredibly supportive startup culture here in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That is a really amazing thing to be a part of. At least in the US, Philly has a reputation for being kind of this great blue collar town. And I think that makes startups stronger because it forces us to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that's not me saying, East Coast is better than West Coast and trying to build a war there.
Yeah.
But there's differences. That's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is.
Yeah, it just is. And I mean, we, as you know, we operate here in Australia as well as in Vietnam. And, we're always asked why Vietnam rather than India or Philippines. And there's neither is better, but they all have their own differences that make them more suited to certain things. And for me, I can see that working with you and working with some of the other startups that we've spoken to in the past from Philly, they've all had a very balanced and grounded attitude towards things, whereas the clients we've had on the West Coast they're very conceptually driven rather than the details.
Yeah, I think I've seen that a bit in speaking with people from the different coasts, that there's a thought process on the West Coast that is much more interested and open to looking at the very big picture.
Yeah.
And here on the East Coast, the mindset is, okay, how are we going to get this done?
Let's
get into the detail.
Yeah.
And really, both are vital. You've got to be able to look at the big picture and get stuff done at the same time. And I think on both sides, on both coasts, I think people are doing the same thing. It's just where people focus the conversations.
Yeah. You've been through some capital raising lately, and I know you're working to raise more. I know you can't give anything commercially sensitive away, but what have been the challenges there?
Well, if you don't like losing 99% of the time, don't try to raise money for your business. I guess that's the summary. So I'm a big baseball fan.
Yeah.
The best hitters in baseball fail 70% of the time.
Wow.
So I play baseball. So a really good hitter in baseball will bat 300. So it's a percentage. You bat 300 means you get a hit 30% of the time.
Yeah.
So you're failing 70% of the time.
Wow.
Maybe that got me ready for it. You look at super successful authors like J.K. Rowling, who got rejected a gazillion times before somebody said yes to Harry Potter. If you believe in what you're doing and you're getting good results from the market and it continues to make sense, just keep hammering it.
Yeah.
And good things happen. I think probably the biggest challenge in trying to raise money is it can be really easy to get distracted by going after investors who aren't a good match for you.
Right.
Which seems kind of obvious when you say it. But I think when you're chasing money, it can get really easy to go down a path of, hey, I just really need this money.
Right.
And I'm going to talk to any investor who will listen to me. And these folks, they want to learn more about your business, no matter what. They often want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to go down a path of, let me just answer these 6 more questions and this person will be more interested in me.
Right.
But are they the right questions to be spending your time answering?
Right.
I've certainly made the mistake of putting a lot of effort into answering the wrong questions.
Okay. Yeah. I was talking to a sales guy a few weeks ago who was telling me that his goal is to get a no from someone because that actually tells him, great, it's time to move on.
Yeah. One of my 2 co-founders, he's a sales guy. He grew up in the IBM sales school, and he preaches all the time about how selling starts at no.
Yeah.
So I definitely get that. It makes total sense.
Great. So there's 3 questions that I'm asking everyone I'm talking to, and I'm really interested to hear your answers because I think one of them is going to be baseball. What would you do differently if you had a chance?
What would I do differently if I had a chance? Well, if we're talking, baseball doesn't have a whole lot to do with Dineable, but if I could work it in, I would try. Certainly, if I could go back to day one on Dineable, I'd probably tell myself 2 things. Number 1, get really, really good, really, really fast at responding mindfully to everything that's thrown at me rather than reacting.
Okay.
It's a personal fault of mine that sometimes I get new information thrown at me and I react before I think about it. I think anybody in an ownership or a leadership role needs to be very, very good at thinking through anything you're responding to.
Do you think that's also an IT thing as well? I mean, we've both come from IT support style roles where your job is to be reactive and try and fix stuff as it comes in on the ticketing system.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you think that's the cause of?
I think that may be some of the cause of it. One of the things that I learned, at least when I was in IT, is that people don't always ask for what they want.
Yeah.
And the way I describe that a lot of times is that if somebody brings you a piece of paper that's ripped into 16 different pieces, what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah.
Are you going to spend a lot of time trying to tape it together, or are you just going to figure out how to read the information on the page and then move on?
Yeah. Because
what the person really wants is the information on the page. They probably don't really care if you can tape it back together.
This is the baseball question, by the way. if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player. Professionally, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing with Dineable right now, I'd probably be in IT consulting.
Yeah.
Because I know, I know the space. I know how to do it. I don't like doing the same thing every day. I like opportunities to learn about new businesses and new things, and consulting gives opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
If money was not an object, I love to cook, and I love to be a part of producing food. I would probably go after some kind of odd business like making pickles or something like that.
Surkin's Gherkins.
Surkin's Gherkins, exactly. I was just down. They've got this thing called a Renaissance Festival in Pennsylvania. My wife and my friends were just down there over the weekend. I got a pickle on the stick, and I watched a joust, and I said to myself, I could make the pickles on a stick, and I could be a jouster.
That would work.
I think it would be good fun.
You certainly wouldn't want for anything interesting. It would be interesting every weekend at the
exactly.
Fairs. You'd never know what's going to happen next.
No, the people watching is just killer at those kind of places.
Last question. Do you have any predictions for the future of technology, especially in your industry at the moment?
Sure. So tech in general, I think it's probably obvious to anybody in tech that if we keep going the way we are going, the technology itself is going to be so ingrained in our lives that we're not even going to notice it or consider it. Mm-hmm. We're going to forget that our lives are powered by tech.
Do you think that's dangerous?
Honestly, no.
Yeah.
I know it's easy to think about things like Skynet.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I think the things that we're building are inherently to make life better.
They're to augment rather than to take over.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get to a place to a Skynet kind of world.
Yeah.
I think we're always looking to augment. It's I was born in the early '80s in '81, so I've kind of grown up alongside the growth of technology, and I'm just amazed by watching it and privileged to be a part of it. Uh, I know a lot of people get really excited about voice control. I think we're a long way off from that being really effective or useful. Uh, I do think that augmented reality is going to play a really, really big part in the next 10 years in what all of us does. I think it's a much bigger lift to really get mainstream used to talking to their devices.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that. Who knows? That's the way I see it. Uh, I guess specifically for the hospitality industry, for that, I'll just tie it right back to Dineable. Honestly, everybody these days wants personalized experiences. Everybody wants to save the planet. We can help do both by reducing waste and creating personalization of meals. That's what Dineable is all about. So we're the future of hospitality tech.
Fantastic.
And I'll close it there.
A great ending. Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure to talk to you again, and we'll thanks for taking the time to talk.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Happy to do it.
Thank you very much.